Just to take away something from today, whether it be one or many things, it's how it is with boating, isn't it? You pick up stuff as you go along the way. Now, my little preamble, I'd say to you that in yachting or sailing, you don't actually, there's a 100% path around the course, which I'd say nobody ever achieves. So it's actually a game of your losses. It's minimising your losses. So that might be all sorts of things, tactical or boat speed or what have you, right? So yeah, there is 100%. I wish we could all find it, but it's pretty hard to find. So what I'm going to talk about in terms of sail trim, and you've probably had many presentations on sails and how they work and all this sort of stuff, but I hope I've got it in a relatively simplistic form, and it will be one of those elements of driving a boat around the course to minimise your losses, right? And another bit I didn't put into my notes here was that what I'm talking about with how you set the sails and how you trim your boat has a lot to do with the quality of the tackle that you use. We are sailing Couta boats, right? And also the ease to operate it and access them. So what I'm saying is, you've got a halyard that's locked off under heaps of knots or what have you, you're not going to change it. If you've got luff lashing that is old or just been there ever since day dot, and as many of you are probably doing that, I'm saying to you, you need to have all of those sorts of controls. They need to be high quality. Where's Moose? He'll be taking orders shortly. And easy to adjust and accessible, okay? So since it's a bit about me telling you how we would go sailing, but all those strings in the boat are adjustable, okay? So now, there we go, into the talk. So don't touch it. So this first picture, and I think of this a lot, that for those of you who sailed these boats are designed and balanced, right? You basically get on them, and I'm generalising a little bit, but you pull the sails on, the boat will sail to within its design performance pretty much. Okay, so the mast bends controlled, the balance, the helm, the whole thing is determined by the designer. Okay, next slide. But we're sailing Couta boats, right? So what you're really sailing, this is a block of wood with a rudimentary sail plan and what have you. So you are sailing something which may not be balanced. You're sailing something which is heavy, the different shapes, they sometimes bounce in the water and what have you. But in many ways this is quite an interesting craft because you have great latitude for screwing it up, right? So those boats out of the packet, they come along and you sail them and they all go relatively the same or similar. But on a Couta boat you could have anything. They're fat, they're thin, they're heavy, they're light, they're etc., and they're poorly rigged, and some of them are rigged like racing yachts. I thought it was quite cute. Anyway, thank you, Adam. Okay, so pretty obvious. Now I'm going to get into the guts of it here. So the mainsail, right? We got it. It's roughly the right shape of it. And the next slide. So the mainsail has, we had a sailmaker talk recently, so it has a certain cut to it, and we're going to assume that the cut's all good. But so within the spars, the sail will have a certain shape, right? Now, the other day I was at home and Lightweight Sharpie left the beach, and they left the beach going out through shore break, and they had the sails strapped down. Like the vang was on from the moment they left the beach. They get in the boat and they strap it on, they try to go out through the waves, and it made me think about the boats. If you leave the shore in the same shape it was in last week, it's all wrong. You start again, you refresh everything, and we'll go to the next slide next. So what I say to you is that the sticks, and they are, is that really what you've got on a Couta boat is a lot of control, firstly out of the mast and the gaff. So, I've called it mast bend, and I'm sincere about saying that, but these amount of primary control in these things, okay? So the next slide, whipping through, this is going to be a 5-minute talk, by the way. So we would do this all the time, right? So telling you how we sail it. So you have the opportunity of putting the peak up, which is like sailing with a stiffer mast, And by putting the peak up, then what it does, it will drag the draft forward in the sail and it'll make a deeper sail. So a straighter mast from its primary setting will make the sail deeper. Dropping the peak back will do pretty much the opposite, it'll flatten the sail out. And you can start to judge that by you get these overbend creases between here and the, what do they call that thing? That hole, that'd be okay. So, we've been around for a while, but we start to lose the memory, you know? Anyway, so if you think about this, the setting of the gaff as mast bend, that's exactly what it's doing. So a straighter mast gives you a much fuller, deeper sail, and a drop back peak will give you a much flatter sail. And we would commonly, I'll put a line across here, in that pretty much you can get to a point where the top of the sail just flags away and you'll end up sailing on the lower part of the sail. And we would typically do that, I've got other drawings coming up, but we'd typically do that when it gets quite fresh, okay? So, now once you get that in your head, so the peak isn't just that one setting that you pull it up to or you leave the shore or what have you, we set it the same. If it's now with this northerly, we're probably going to drop it back, but by the time we go racing it might be completely different, we might want more power. Skipping through them, thank you. Right, okay, so we'll just leave the mast bend bit alone, right? The luff lashing here, that if you leave it slack, and you might all be doing this, but let's just say the gun boats around the place, every time they go out with their skilled sailors, they're going to be doing all this stuff all the time, and they're going to be doing it many times during the race. So if you slacken off the lashing down here, you allow sailcloth to fall back into the sail, and you end up with what I've got here, a draft aft round back sail. Again, you're in that area of you're allowing sailcloth to fall back into the sail, and you'll end up with a much more powerful sail. But you end up with this business of the round back. So the draft is back and the guts of the sail. And if you look up at the batten line, you'll see it's actually returning back to you. I'll get into when we might be doing this, but this is something we would do all the time. Like last week, a week before we sailed, that we were sitting there and we strapped the lashing up quite tight to flatten the sail out because it was quite a nice breeze, the water was flat, all our weight is up on the windward rail, so we were actually looking at it thinking, is it tight enough? We actually went back and tightened it yet again because we thought we can do with a flatter sail. If we have a leftover northerly swell and the breeze is wafting around, we're going to want to do this. We're going to want to make the sail much, much rounder to make it more powerful. Now, I don't want to go too much into the details, but just say it's a more powerful setting, and I'll cover twist and so forth in a moment. Thank you, Adam. The opposite is the luff lash tight is going to pull this draft right forward. Now, there's two bits of this. Pulls draft forward and opens the back of the sail. So by pulling the sailcloth forward and we're pulling the shape of the sail forward, we end up, it's a bit, I'm trying to think of how I can explain it to you, that if you pull on, this is protest flags, let me unwrap the protest flag, here we go. That with the sail, when you pull on it, it pulls shape into where the tension is, and where there's no tension, it leaves it, there's less pressure on the sail and it straightens out. So this is pretty much what's happening here, that we're pulling tension and we're actually forcing the drive to go forward. So when you want to have the boats maybe moving through waves, we don't want to have the extra power on the sail, we want the back of the sail to be flat. Now, there's two bits of this. I've said one, you're pulling the sailcloth to the mast, so you're pulling it out of the guts of the sail, you're pulling it forward. Plus we're also pulling tension down through here as well, and that'll pull the draft forward in the sail and give you a straight back.
So Nigel, how do you estimate where the draft is? I mean, obviously if it's tighter it's going to be forward, but how do you know? I'm
going to have difficulty drawing on this screen because it might just stay there for a while. But look, it's pretty much, when you look up the sail, you do kind of, you know, eyeballing it is a big part of it, but you in the beginning probably had stripes in the sail. But this sort of shape here, and straight. It literally is this. You look to see if the batten line is straight, and how there's also, let's say, an outcome to this. When you pull that tension down the front of the sail, you can get an idea there's actually, there's more depth in the front of the sail. It's rounder in this part and it's straighter there. And the previous slide that I had, it was straighter in the front but rounder in the back, because we let the sail plug fall back in the sail and the shape goes back. Again, what you're doing is you're actually pulling the shape forward in the sail, and to an extent the opposite happens the other way. You're letting the front go slack and there's more shape in the back of the sail. Now, we don't want a round back sail when it's blowing a lot, above probably 12 knots or so, but we do want to have all the draft forward in the sail when the boat's chopping through waves and so forth, and we want to have a depowered back of the sail when it's fresher. Okay? So you eyeball it and you get it used to something. I mean, a buggered sail will have the draft will move back in the sail just because the back of the sail gets worn out and what have you, and that's why you get rid of them and buy a new one. And your sail makers. Thanks, Adam. Going on. Okay, here we go. Right now, so what have we covered there? So we've done our mast bend. We've done this business of whether we're on a round sail or a flat sail. Now, so what makes the boat go? And the boat, the sails need to have flow over them, right? So this drawing, so we've got no twist, right? So we've got a very tight ledge from the Sharpie that was leaving the beach, right? The air comes into the sail, but if you've got the back, and this is actually the back side of the sail, we can supposedly see here, you've got a very tight ledge, the air can't get out. So it's not actually, it's not an efficient process. Like if an aeroplane had no air getting out of the wing, it would stall and it would crash, right? So we do want to have, the whole gig is that it flows, right? And that you can have, say if you've got the sail strapped on, you will literally wallow away because you don't have any flows moving across the sail. You spring the sheet, you get some twist, the air comes in the sail and goes out, and the boat will start to drive, and as you get apparent wind, you can firm the sails, right? I guess the extreme of that is, well, the extreme of having it strapped on without the air being able to get out of the sail is having the sail flagging. They're almost the same. So if the sail's out, it's just flapping the breeze, you're not catching any wind. So you don't overcatch it, you don't undercatch it. That's what sail trimming's all about. Thanks, Adam.
And the leech ribbons tell you that.
Well, the leech, well, yeah, and actually I will cover that right now because I've got to stretch it from 5 minutes. So the leech ribbon, you know, how many of you go sailing around and somebody says, oh, the top tails around the back of the sail, or even the next one, right? I don't see that as necessarily a bad thing. Now let's just go to the extreme. If all of them are wrapped around the back, you're clearly oversheeted, right? So those top telltales may stall sometimes because we are racing and we want to have, we're looking for height, we're looking for speed, we want to go to the optimum the boat can sail at. Now I might say that first boat, that first slide, I don't know if those telltales in boats like that would ever stall because they are very flat sections, the boats go very quick, and you know, but in a Couta boat, your dynamic is, you know, your slow speed can be quite slow, so you can actually stall quite easily. And hopefully after what I'm talking about is that we're going to try and minimise the times when you overdo it. In short, if all the telltales are streaming, you can probably sheet it on a bit. And when they start to stall, you're probably in the area where, particularly those top ones, that you're probably looking good. Now, the alternative, my first picture before this was the twist, right? So twist is air in and air out. So, you know, twist is actually extremely healthy, particularly in a Couta boat. In fact, all boats have it. Those big yachts have it as well. So you're going to be guaranteed you're moving and you've got a dynamic about you. So this is a cool thing, but I'll put the boom down. Next slide. Because we're not going to go anywhere if we're having the boom down and we're kind of reaching around the course. So we want to achieve height as we go to windward. So this here in a Couta boat is pretty much what we do, where we have, to an extent, a reasonable element of twist, but we put the boom up. And we put the boom up so that we've essentially got the same dynamic of air coming in the sail, The air can still get out of the sail, but the boom's not down. We've actually got some of the sail, you can see a bit of the back of the sail here, so we're presenting the leach up, which helps us get helm or bight to windward.
Sorry, the acceleration out of a tack, this becomes critical because if you overshoot out of a tack, you kill yourself.
Correct, and something the other week we probably weren't doing as well as we should have, but look, a Couta Boat is definitely this sort of a sailing where you'll say we're sailing to windward, we're strapped on and we do a tack. So in our boat we would tack with the sail still on.
Yeah.
So we are using, if the jib even came, or jib starts to luff, the mainsail leach is usually still drawing. It helps the boat turn with minimum rudder.
Yeah.
You go through the wind and the sails empty out. You fall across to the new tack. Now, if the main is on hard, it kind of helps, it makes you kind of want to round up and not perhaps come away to a more softer or generous angle. Jib comes across, get the jib on, but the boat has lost, how much in the Couta Boat? If you've gone from say 6.5 knots, you might have gone down to 4.5 knots. You might have lost 2 knots or more of boat speed. So you need to come out on the new tack with this refreshed, twisted feel. And common thing that is in my head all the time with sailing is it's like the boat has a battery. And when you're sailing along before the tack, wait to windward, your battery is sort of maximum charge. You go through the tack, you've emptied a lot of that energy in the boat out, so you need to come out in a refreshed style on the new tack and 5 or so degrees away from where you might sail on the wind. Sails softer, and when the sails fill, they start to re-energise, and as you move 2 boat lengths, you start to then firm them up and pull the leach down and what have you, and use this, you can call it like a trim tab flap or whatever on the back of the sail. If it's presented to windward, it helps make the boat round up and come back onto the wind. So always out of attack, you're going to go into this twisted area, and the goal is to then strap it down as tight as it will go before it chokes. Yeah. Now we'll talk about this a bit more here now. So you know the whole thing of racing and sailing a boat as optimum is that you need to be careful that you have to have the mindset of adjustment. Like the lap before, you may have had plenty of breeze. Actually, I might start that again. The other week we're going out there and you get gusts, you think, oh, it's windy, it's fresh, you know, what have you. So you do your luff lashing up tight and you're used to trimming the sail tight and you've got the jib strapped in and what have you. But really, in reality, in these boats, you should be, and down in Sorrento, we probably should be thinking about the average breeze, not the gusts. And even below the average breeze is the light bits that you can absolutely die in. So, here's a way to put that. You trim up for a fresh day, you go up this first beat, and you've got many big light patches. You're sailing around with the sails strapped out and what have you. It's not what the best boats are doing out there. They will already attend to first spring a bit of sheet, put the traveller up. I'm not really covering the foot in, but you can put the foot out all in and so forth. But this is going on all the time in their better boats. I'll get to the jib in a second, but you understand that? So it's not just a one setting for everything. And if you're doing that, you need to not do that. You need to start to think that some of these boats are doing it all the time. Don't go next one, Adam. You go traveller. This is the traveller. So bit of a rough guide for you, okay? So I'm not sure where to start from. We'll start over here. In under 10 knots, the traveller is well to windward. In fact, the traveller might be this sort of far, how much, 600 mil, something like that. It can be quite a long way to windward, and the boom can be quite well to windward of the centre line or somewhere near the centre line with the sheets sprung. So under 10 knots, well to windward. I'd say even 10 to 14 knots in a Couta Boat, maybe not quite to 14 knots, that the traveller would still be to windward. This might be 100 mil, 150 mil or something to windward the centre line. So with the extra energy in the sail, you are still sheeting quite tight, but you want to have the boom somewhere towards the centre line still. Now, 2 weeks ago, it was fresher times, and we were lucky enough to have the Traveller almost on centre line for the whole day, which means you don't have to do much, just leave it cleared off. But as it did soften, we started to go back into this mode of pulling the Traveller up so we have more of a twisted sail. But I rated this at 16 knots plus, you've probably got the luxury of having the Traveller on centre all the time. Now, 20 knots plus, you put the Traveller below centre line because the boat's carrying too much. That first diagram of the gaff is back. You can have this down here and you probably find you've got the sheet on quite hard and the top of the sail will be wasting away and things actually quite flat. But it gives you, by strapping the boom down here, the boat will have quite a bit of stability to stay on a relatively stable course by doing that. Whereas in 20 odd knots plus, if you've got the Traveller right up and the leech is loose, the boat is the sail tends to empty out and flap and carry on like that. It's not very stable. But I don't know if this is a guide for you all, but yeah, this Traveller can go well to windward and lighter breezes to get that deep, soft sail shape with a lot of twist. 10 to 14 knots, 16 knots probably smack in the middle, and when it's really fresh, we're strapping it down because we want to try and control it and stop it from flapping and emptying out all the time.
Nigel, you have the Traveller up to windward before you tack.
Yep.
Leo,
Yep.
leave it high, and then when do you bring it high on the other side when you have tack?
Fred's on the ball here. So we would have the Traveller up all the time with the sheet still on it until the sail completely empties. So let's just say mid-tack. And after mid-tack, like head to wind, we then start to pull it to the new side. Okay, so, just one of those bugbears I have as a captain is that you're about to tack and somebody cracks the main sheet off. So you lose all that ability to help the boat turn by the mainsail. Remember the sails do most of the turning anyway. The rudder is tiny compared to the scale and the jib and the mainsail. So by having the mainsail on, just after the pivot point of the centreboard, it helps turn the boat through the wind. Go. The jib, almost forgot about it, right? So just to explain a bit of this stuff here. So I'll dob Moose in where he is here, and Phil and others. Any day, and this apply. Okay, on the you hoist the jib off the front of the club here, and you get a few people onto it, and you strap it up, cleat it off, jibs up, go out, have practice and what have you, and you leave it there strapped on just how it came off the dock, right? So the better sailors, they might do that off the shore, but it's nowhere near where they're going to go sailing. So you go out there, you have a look, and one of the first things would be in, say, a moderate breeze is the jib forestay is too tight. You'll soften it to where it needs to be. Or the opposite would be, you've gone out there, it's fresher than you thought, and you think, oh, this is way too soft, we need to strap it up. So there are decisions that need to be made on where this should be, and this is a full-on variable. It's not one of those things you set when you leave the moorings. I started with this picture here about, this is the luff tension is, the forestay tension, or the jib forestay tension is tight, but also I've just put a couple of lines in here too, that I'm going to go for an assumption that the sailcloth is tight, hence my protest flag thing, and we have draft, forward and straight back. This is a fresh air setting, how many of you might leave the moorings. Draft, forward, straight back. Next slide. You guessed it. Luff, soft, sag. So by giving it, depending on your purchase, couple hundred mil, 6 inches or what have you, you put some sag into it, which lets that cloth fall back into the sail, and you know, with a much, big tear shape in here, a much fuller, deeper sail with a finer entry and around the back. Draft, aft, round, softer sail. So when the boat's moving through chop, there's not much breeze, you don't want a dead strapped out sail. So this is the complete opposite here. Everybody clear on that? Next one. What have we got? Okay. So my little gauge for you here is that 5 to 8 knots soft, 8 to 11 knots middle, it's firm, and probably in a Couta boat, probably above 12 knots. In Dunedin, 12 knots to 14 knots is a fair bit of breeze, tight as you can get it, okay? So we would go through that in any race. After a windward beat, leeward mark, we'd be already assessing whether we should back it off or tighten it up. And we'll, once again, we'll pick up, perhaps not what the gusts are doing for us, but what the middle range of it is. Because you do get lots of, particularly from the south or southwest or what have you, we get those big bands of kind of average breeze, and then we get a gust band come off the shore and things like that. So don't overdo it, but I just say to you, when you get above, say, 12 or 14 knots, you probably just want it tight. Because it's a Couta boat, there's a lot of things bending there and what have you. So everybody kind of clear on what I'm saying there? And this is how it is, right? Another? Right, okay, yeah, this is a bit of a summary here. So, in that lighter range for power, for a powerful setup, soft bore stay, loose luff, gaff up, traveller high, and twist. So there's a whole combination of things we've done here with what I've been speaking about: bore stay, luff, slackness, gaff, traveller, and twist. You're ideally set up to put power into the boat and have the air come into the sails and get out of the sails relatively easily. Okay? One more bigger. Cars. Oh, jib cars. So the I haven't spoken about the. Didn't want to get too over the top here. So with the jib car, that fundamentally shedding aft allows the clew to lift and the top of the sail to twist and open out. By putting the car forward, and if you strapped it on, you're going to tighten the ledge and the foot at the same time. But car forward with some sheet out will allow the sail to fly, and you can trim it more directly through here, whereas heavy air setting or fresh air setting, you'll want to start to waste off the top of the sail, so you'll sheet aft. So that's kind of fundamental. But yeah, in lighter breezes, you put the car forward, you've got more control over it. In fresher breezes, you put the jib car aft. I mean, that jib car aft can go to the point where, I'm not sure how far back you get it, you put it back as far as you can, and you'll sheet solidly through there and let the top of the sail waft off. And we have done that plenty of times in the Couta boat. It might sound retarded, but if you see the opties go around the course, a Couta boat mainsail isn't much different than an opti, and they let the top of the sail twist off, and we would do that too. With sail portsea cups with the whole top of the sail, nasty creases and what have you, and the same would be applied to the jib, sheeting aft. We don't want the top of the sails working for us at all, we just want to have them feathering the breeze. What's next? Okay, to depower for strong winds, you guessed it, tight forestay, drop the gaff. These creases will be your indication as to, I mean, you can actually have this, if it was just flagging around up here, the boat would probably stay reasonably well actually, but you'll start to see these appear when you're achieving letting the top of the sail drop off. I'll put this line here as well to say that the top of the sail is really not doing much. We are trying to get rid of power because it's depowering, and you'll be able to comfortably sail the boat using this much of the mainsail. You keep your height by having this part of the sail allow you to keep the boat pointing to windward, and with the jib, as Adam's saying, that the ship will be well back, and we don't really care about the top of the jib twisting open and depowering for us as well. And traveller down, if I explained myself well enough before, that with the traveller now down off the centre line 100 mil or so, it'll be strapped on quite tightly, mainly just to keep this sail setting. Scotty was saying in the preamble when we sailed the 12 metre yachts years ago, over in Western Australia, it's bloody windy over there, and you'd have two boats side by side sailing along through, 20 odd knots, what have you, 25 tonne boats, and so the mainsail is strapped down. Occasionally you might get blowback from the jib, which would make the mainsail shake. So it'd empty out of air and then reset and go along that. And you see your boats lose a quarter of a boat length every time the mainsail shook, because it's all drag and needs to reset and reflow as the boat's going over the waves. Mainsail shakes, mainsail shakes and what have you. So having the sail strapped down and stopping it from shaking in strong breeze is a much more efficient thing, because you keep your helm, all those sort of things, the boat stays more in balance. Am I near the last slide? That's it. Okay. So, you know, the point of it is that there are a lot of adjustments in the Couta Boat. It's not a balanced equation. The boat is always searching for something to help it go faster. You know, when we kids used to be amazed that you go out sailing and somebody would say, oh, it's 10 knots all day, but that's certainly not how it is. By every minute and by every leg of the course, something changes, and around here it might be the tide as well and things like that. So your boat will be asking you for more power, or you need to get rid of power. This luff lashing, we would actually wrench up our luff lashing if we expect the next speed's going to be fresher. It's picking up in a sea breeze, it's getting fresher than going around the track. So we'll send somebody up there and they'll yank it as much as they can, or if we can't get to it, we'll lift the tub up as hard as we can bloody get it to do the same thing, pretty much. Okay? Some boats have a cunning eye, which, you know, we dearly love one, but it's not going to happen. So if you had a cunning eye, they would wrench that down to get that effect. Our cunning eye is the tub, so you want to drag it up as hard as you can, which will, in effect, tighten the luff lashing and pull the draft forward as the breeze gets heavier. So all these things are out there, they're all at your fingertips. As I said in the beginning, quality of the tackle, the ease of access to them, and the ease of being able to operate them is what it's all about. This Jack?
You just want to bring up the fact that if you've got your jib deep and your main flat,
Yeah.
you get that spewing effect down onto the luff.
Yeah, I'm short of pencils here, but so Jack's kind of right. Now, I said in the 12 midi lot, they're pretty similar things, you know. Oh, we go. I've even got a template. Love it. Okay, so back in the day, you have boats which have genoas, right, and they have a mast and have a sail, right. So that's pretty much what we've got. We've got an overlapping headsail. So all those old-fashioned boats, but the headsails are pretty big. Our headsails are quite big. So Jack was saying about if you have a deep sail, exaggerating it, the air coming in the sail and around back actually blows back on the back side of the mainsail. And I've just knocked this on the head now, so let's just say we're going to go, what I was saying about we've got to put our drive forward and we're going to have a straight back sail, that it doesn't blow back into the back of the mainsail as much. Pretty obvious, but Jack's point's right. You don't go around with a fat, like a soft, luff, round headsail that's interfering with the air, which is blowing the wind back into the back of the mainsail. So, trying to get rid of these things here for you. Let's just get rid of the jib for a minute, completely. Rough guy. Okay, so, where's my Couta Boat? There it is. So, we'll go back to the Couta Boat mainsail for a second. Here it is here. So, since we're getting into it, right? So, I said earlier on about if you go out there and the mainsail's flapping away and the jib's flapping away, you're not catching any breeze, right? So we catch the breeze to make the boat go forward. So, sheet the sails on and the mainsail. So in 7 knots of breeze, if you get any sort of bubbling, a little bit of bubbling in the front part of the mainsail, it's actually probably a pretty good indication that you've got the jib in firmly and you're compressing the air between the back of the mainsail and the jib. So a little bit of blowback on the mainsail is a good indication of your trim. I might just increase that to 10 knots. At 10 knots you'll definitely see bubbling. You'll see that all the way up till certainly 20 odd knots, no worries. But bubbling in the front of the sail is good. Now, when the bubbling gets too much and it starts to make, the back of the mainsail luff or flip open opposite the jib's way too tight. So there's another sort of summary to Jack's thing is that you need to make the jib flatter. You might have to put the car on the jib out to make the, do this from the back end here. And if I'm going to try and draw the jib forward of that, So if the jib is tight, the opportunity for the air to come between the back of the mainsail and jib is not going to happen. So car aft, whatever, get the twist of the jib bigger and there's a much greater opportunity for the air to pass through there. So if my drawing's clear enough for you, that blow back in the front of the mainsail is a great indication that the trim of the jib is firm enough and you've got some interference going on between the jib and the main. I'll ask that, all right? So when the bubbling, the blowback, the bubble gets too great, it starts to be an indication you need to actually either put the car up and open the slot between the jib and the mainsail.
But a small amount of bubbling is a positive in 10 knots.
Yeah, absolutely, I'll be looking for that. Like say, I'm not sure what's blowing out there now, but certainly now there's plenty of breeze for that. But yeah, you can always look at it. You just see a little flutter of it, and it's a good indication that that interference. I think the rule of it is that without getting into too much, come draw a boat over here. I'm running out of space. If there's a boat like that, and there's a mast, and there's a sail, something like that. So when I've got to do a Couta Boat. So when this is really tight, that I think it's it's a low pressure. Low pressure is here, and the high pressure is around here. As the air runs around the entire sail plan, and to an extent you're slowing it on this windward side. But again, it doesn't work if the air is stopped and stalled on this side. You get too much drag. But so this pressure here actually just helps that dynamic of high pressure around the back and low pressure in here until you stop it and it maybe goes to S, which is stall. So you can stop all the air moving across the sails and it doesn't work. So you ease the sheet or sheet it out wider, the air can still run through here and you have a healthy pressure difference, and that's what makes boats go. So to your question, yeah, we'll always look for some indication of
Softness.
blowback.
Yeah.
But it gets, so if that's 10 knots, when we get to 20 knots, this is going to go berserk. It's going to blow back all the way through the sail and make the mainsail rag, which we don't want.
One last question.
Yeah.
On your view, your luff line,
Yeah.
there's another luff line of course,
Yeah.
it's fixed. How tight should that be lashed at the top, because it's at the top of the jib too on most sails?
Yeah.
So
Well,
how tight should you have that? Because
Yeah.
it's not like on a Hartney you can let your luff line go and things like that. This is a fixed thing.
Well, when I, it sounds like I'm good. Like, say it's a Portsea Cup, right? That we would go out there, I would actually adjust it. Yeah. So I would be out there with a bit of, sailmaker might give you the sail with it all. So by the way, it's fixed at the top and at the tack at the bottom.
Yeah.
I would say I need this to be bloody tight, right? Because it's going to be fresh down in Portsea, what have you. I want to have drive forward. I'm not going to take the chance, and I'll lash it. And you'll be amazed to the difference it makes. The sails are designed, their thread directions and things like that, even the radial sails are all designed to carry the loads. But if you put more sail, if you lash the tack of the sail down, and let's say your fore stays tight, and you're pulling that draft forward, you're going to get the result. And we would change that a lot.
Okay.
We do sometimes, like today, we'll do a set and forget. Is that contrary to what I'm talking about? That's all right.
You can't set it though on when you're sailing because
It's bloody difficult, that's right.
Well,
But you'll, the sort of pseudo way around it, like the same with the luff lashing here, is that by pulling up the tub here, you'll get a bit of that effect. And there's another little part of it here which up in here we have some sort of attachment. There's a cringle or something up in here. So you know, for many years we've had that relatively long strop as such, so that when we do yank the tub up, that we try to get some sort of what we think is a bit of a flow through from. So this is more like a hinge point than a fixed point. So we try to, by cranking that tub up, that we think we're going to try and get a bit of an effect into the top part of the gaff by having this point flowing, because if it was attached to the gaff, we'll only get it in the bottom of the sail. But so this tension to yank the tub up, and this tension to stiffen the forestay will get you some sort of benefit in draft forward.
Don't give away all the secrets.
There's many more things to the game than that. These things here too, you know, people have their laugh at times about a mark on the mast where the, you know, where your falls of your tackle are, or some registration point. That's all really healthy. And as Adam's saying, that same thing on the tube. You know, you might have a little line or a mark or what have you. All those things, they don't have to be in the right spot. They just need to be there as a reference. Anyway, the point of today was that, yeah, if you take away a couple of those thoughts, I'm just saying to you that the better boats do this all the way around the course. There's no reason why you can't be one of those better boats.
Well said.